Man United might not thank me, but get the contract out, put it on the table, let him sign it, let him write whatever numbers he wants to put on there, given what he's done now since he's come in, and let him sign the contract and go. Ollie's at the wheel, man, he's doing it, he's doing his thing. Man United are back.
They've fallen, they've come a long way, but the problem is when they're falling, the other teams like Man City and Liverpool are so much better than before. It's frightening.
He's hammering 4 or 5 of the young players at the club, saying that their mentality, etc., isn't right. What do you expect? Do you expect to have the players on side, or do you expect players to sit there and go, hold on a minute, my manager's hammering me in the public again?
If that's a player giving it their all, then Man United are in bigger trouble than I even think, and I think they're in huge trouble.
If it was my club and that was the case, I'd be disappointed, I'd be worried, and I think you're seeing that now. It's the slow demise.
He's playing like somebody who has had his head turned. He's playing like somebody who doesn't quite want to be here.
David Moyes, Lou Van Gaal, Jose Mourinho, Solskjaer now. The problems aren't with them.
And that's in a way why you like the Glazers, because they've left you with control. They don't really control the club, you do.
But they're supportive. That's the important thing.
If you were living in America and looking at the model, you'd be pleased. Financially, it's making good sense for them.
When people see Schweinsteiger on the team sheet, that's going to send some shivers down the spine.
Hold up. Wait a minute. Something ain't right. Something ain't right. Something ain't right.
Welcome, everybody, to this very special episode of the Victory and Vices podcast. Me, Rory Spooner, and Vectacular back with the spectacular vernacular again. Bars for days. Lisa Left Eye Lopez, shout out to her. Rest in peace. Anyway, so moving forward. Now, this episode is all about Manchester United. You've clicked the title, you're intrigued, you're thinking, what's going on? Yep. What's the 411? We're about to give it to you. Now, we were going to do this video a long time ago, but like everything else in life with us, we digress, we push things back, we move things forward.
Life happens.
Yeah, life happens. Real life gets in the way. But this is a very crucial moment in Manchester United's history. Now, VMV, as we discussed last week, is a very neutral platform. We talk about football in what some will say a non-biased way, others, depending on who they are, you know who you are, will say we talk about it in a biased way. I personally feel like we don't. This platform, we tell the truth. Good, bad, ugly. We'll talk about it, right?
Yeah.
It's a fair shout.
That's true.
Now,
correct.
With us both being Manchester United fans, again, as I said, this is a very crucial part of Manchester United's history. They're going through a rather long transitional stage, shall we say.
That is one way to put
it. That's being very polite.
Yeah.
We're going to break it down, this podcast, so we talk about the good, the bad, the ugly. We want to give as much context as possible. We want to make it as digestible as possible as well. So if you are a Manchester United fan and you're watching, go tell other Manchester United fans to watch. We want your opinion. We are United fans, like I said. We want to interact with everybody. We want to know what you think. And if you support anybody else, you're probably pissing your pants laughing at the United demise. Pull up some popcorn, take a seat. You're more than welcome to enjoy it as well. That's what we're here for. So, as I said, we're going to make it as digestible as possible. So we're going to sort of break it down into 4 segments. The first segment will be the Glazer family.
Yeah.
The second segment will be Edward Woodward, which is the worst fucking name ever, by the way. Third segment will be Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. And the fourth segment will be about the players themselves. So we'll kick off with the first segment, okay? Now, segment 1, the Glazer family. Now, the Glazer family bought Manchester United in 2005, I believe the year was, according to my research. I may be wrong, I may be right, I'm pretty sure I'm right.
Sounds about right to me, yeah.
Sounds about right, yeah? So the Glazer family bought Manchester United, and they saddled Manchester United with a shit ton of debt and very high interest repayments. And since 2005, have taken out over £1 billion from Manchester United. Now, there's a few things I wanted to bring up regarding the Glazer family and the running of the football club. I know from just research in general, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are incredibly unsuccessful American football team, which is actually owned by the Glazer family as well. Yeah. I don't know if you sort of had a look on Twitter, because I know Vecky's lost his access to the VMV page ever since he had some phone issues. Happens to the best of us. It happened to me too. There's a lot of talk on Twitter about the Glazers actually selling now. I don't know if you've seen it, but there was a few pages I came across where, and again, I don't know an awful lot about shares, right? There's talk of the Glazer family turning Class B shares into Class A shares and various other things like that. So I lack a bit of context on it, right? Because I don't get the whole scope of it. But it seems like things are moving forward with the Glazer family. What would be your take on them as it stands? Do you think they'll sell anytime soon?
Sell United now, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't really see their logic why they would want to sell, personally. Because from a monetary perspective, we talk about the debt, but United as a business does very well, right?
They had, I think, 690 million profit, maybe something the other day,
and
give or take.
Every time there's like a quarterly review or a review where they look at how much money they make, and there always seems to be record profits, right? Record numbers.
Yeah.
So from that perspective, I don't really see why they would want out of that.
I got you.
But again, you said that there probably needs to be a little bit more context behind that. Have you read into anything as to why they would be potentially looking to sell or move the club on?
From what I've heard, and this is just going off what I've heard, the Chevrolet deal, which is due for renewal this year, which I think was around 400 million, is not being renewed by Chevrolet due to basically United being a brand that is a declining brand. They're not the brand that they used to be.
Okay.
They are not the football club that they used to be. So the Chevrolet deal is going down the pan. United won't struggle to get sponsorship, but they will struggle to get the money they want.
Do you think, like you saying that now, do you honestly think that United are a declining brand?
Yeah.
Because I think the brand seems as if it's as strong as ever.
No. I think you'd be very surprised. I think you'd be very surprised.
But would that not point to all the money and the profits and the revenues going up? Where else would that be coming from?
Well, United's net spend this summer was lower than Aston Villa.
Yeah.
So in that respect, if you're taking in pure profit, United spent very little in the transfer window.
Yeah, I just think from like a sponsorship perspective and from a brand perspective, like I don't see it's Manchester United around the world. They're huge. Like, perhaps I'm wrong. Maybe it is declining. The team definitely is declining, and the quality of the football at the club and everything else is declining. But I feel like the brand is probably the only constant thing. But you're right in what you're saying. They would not struggle to get another big-time sponsor.
Well, do you know what? It's interesting times because for me, I think this is where the rubber meets the road a little bit. I don't see how Manchester United can keep going as a brand when you play that type of football. It's trash. It's pure trash. The club as a whole is in just the worst predicament possible. And for me, there comes a point now where I just think to myself, okay, as a brand, the brand ultimately has to suffer if the football continues to suffer. The two go hand in hand, whether people like it or not. For some reason, the people at the top of Manchester United, the Glazer family, they can't really grasp that. They don't get that football and the brand are a match made in heaven.
Yeah.
So I think it's going to come to a head very shortly. Again, there's talk on Twitter of share developments. Again, you'd have to go away and research that yourself. I'm not an expert on that. I'm only relaying what I've seen. I think if United have a really bad finish this season, the Glazer family will probably turn around and go, you know what? Is this worth it anymore? Because there's interest, and there is a little bit of interest from the Saudis. Now, the Saudis with their human rights record is... how can I put this without them basically finding our YouTube channel and absolutely gunning me down? It is... What word am I looking for? It's scary. That's what it is. That's what it is. They don't really give a fuck about human life, and if you get in the way, you're just an obstacle in the way, as we've seen.
You're just roadkill, right?
Yeah, you are roadkill. Yeah, there's certain political developments, and maybe a lot of people wouldn't have seen with journalists and various other things. They don't take too kindly to being criticised, shall we say? Are they the type of men you'd want in charge of Manchester United Football Club?
It depends what sort of control that they're happy to give to the manager.
Do you know what though? I love that comment because a lot of people feel the same way though.
I mean, to an extent, right? I don't really give a fuck, right? What certain things are going on behind the scenes.
That's fine.
If I don't need to hear about it, I don't need to know about it. I don't need to care about it. Okay. I mean, there's always a line. You always draw a line somewhere, right? It can always get to a point where you think, okay, we kind of don't want any of that going on, right? But
yeah,
if that's going to be, just kept, a bit quieter behind the scenes. If they're just going to let the manager or even have a director of football just do their thing, and there's going to be money ready and available, bring them in.
It's an interesting one because it's a 50-50 split on Twitter. There are fans like yourself that go, you know what, I see no evil, I hear no evil, I speak no evil, out of sight, out of mind. As long as they are doing what they're supposed to do from an ownership standpoint, I can't control politics. The world will still keep revolving around me. What they do is what they do. It's on them. But there are other people then who turn around and go, well, the Glazer family are one type of evil, but the Saudi regime, that's a whole other type of evil. And to a certain extent, I would agree. But where do you draw the line? Because like you said, it's business first.
Yeah, I just feel like that's not our problem to have or deal with.
That's it. That's an interesting take. I didn't think you would say that.
No?
I don't know. No, I didn't anticipate that. I thought you'd be more of a human, like that Extinction Rebellion lot.
Yeah.
You'd be dancing on planes somewhere trying to stop them.
There's all sorts of issues and corruption going on in football anyway with owners of other clubs, right?
Yeah. No, look, one sorry to cut you off, bro. One thing I will say is this. Anybody with that level of money, they've probably got some type of blood on their hands. Yeah. Always. Whether it's Abramovich, whether it's the Saudis, whether it's the Glazers, the only way you can accumulate that, unless it's generational wealth, is you've got to fuck a few people over. That's a fair shout, right?
Yeah, no, that's true. Yeah, no, it actually wouldn't really bother me a great deal, and unless something's going to start to be made publicly of it, and it's going to affect the actual club.
Yeah,
which I couldn't really see happening.
Yeah, I think that's what a lot of people's concern is, the publicity it would generate in a negative light, because it would take away from the football club itself.
But, they say time will heal. Time is a healer.
Time is a healer,
that's temporary.
It's the Glazer. Speaking from both of us, one thing we can agree on is we'd both love to see the Glazer family out.
Yeah.
I think they've run their course at Manchester United now. Whilst they have had success, and we must acknowledge in parts there were successful years, the large majority of it has been utterly piss. Like the decision making that has gone into their train of thought on some things, I really can't understand.
You say about we have had sustained periods of success under their ownership, but how much is that actually down to Fergie?
Well, I was going to say I don't put that down to the Glazer family and their initiatives. That's due to one man and his miraculous man management skills.
Yeah, and the people who he brought, who he had around him. Yeah. So like you say, I wouldn't necessarily put that down to much of the Glazers' work.
No.
Obviously, there was money available. We had a genius at the helm, and he knew exactly how to spend it.
That's very true, bro. I mean, Ferguson, when he left, people said, this is where you're going to see United struggle. Because that man could turn water into wine every single time, without fail.
Do you know what, right? I remember people saying how much we would struggle, and obviously, to an extent, I agreed. But I don't know about you, but I didn't expect to be sitting here 6 years later and it would still be this bad.
I knew there would be a transitional period.
Of course, yeah.
And I'll be honest with you, I don't think anybody thought Moyes was correct. I don't know maybe Ferguson gave Moyes the green light and he kind of fucked it up a little bit, but I never thought Moyes was right. I think that was a poor decision from the Glazers. Moving forward, they kind of got I'd say, 99 things out of 100 they've got wrong. There's very few things they've actually got right.
The thing is, though, is that after the Moyes appointment, so post-Moyes, it's not like they've brought in a poor quality of managers.
No, that's true.
So, it then begs the question is, how much of the problems is actually from the manager?
I would go to say some of it, but then the situations at Manchester United become so toxic because of the lack of understanding and the lack of cultural awareness from the people above the manager, that the managers there are just in the end pulling their hair out. They're like, I cannot believe.
Shit just falls on
do you know what I mean? Shit fucking, it rolls downhill, right? Yeah. Don't get me wrong, it can fly uphill as well. I've seen it many a time. But it generally rolls downhill. The Glazer family themselves, again, I must stress, me and Becky, we want the Glazer family fucking out of Manchester United.
Correct.
Out of Manchester, out of Britain, out of the EU, #Brexit. Fuck them, right? I don't like them. I don't like what they've done to the club. They've took over $1 billion out of that club, which could then be reinvested into the playing squad. United could have had maybe not a beautiful new stadium, but they could have certainly enhanced Old Trafford to the point where it could actually be competing with some of the newer stadiums, right?
Yeah, and it can be extended.
It's not to say that money, that $1 billion, that would have been reinvested wisely. We've seen historically with the Glazers that they don't really have a clue when it comes to spending money. They've spent money incorrectly when they've had it. They've not invested when they should have. So Who knows what would have happened with that money? What I do know is that money is in Florida pockets and it belongs in Manchester. So anybody from the Glazer family that happens to watch this, please pack your bags and fuck off. And that's me being polite about things. I'm being a gentleman for now.
It's pretty PC, actually.
Don't make me start knocking doors, because I fucking can't stand these guys. But the Glazer family as a whole, like I said, we can go into depth about shares. I don't necessarily know an awful lot about it, right? So we'd be raking ground that we just wouldn't fully understand. But what we do know about the ownership is they are pretty catastrophic. And again, that's putting it mild. So the Glazer family, we can always come back to, and we can sort of rewind a few things they do. I wanted to touch upon a man who I feel is the face of the Glazer regime.
Do you think that he's this person? I know you're going to obviously...
You know what I'm going with.
Do you think that he is a bigger problem than the Glazers, or the Glazers are the bigger issue?
The Glazers are the bigger problem. He is the face of the regime, and he will ultimately be the fall guy. But he has his own problems, and that man, Ed Woodward, will come on to it now. Now, Ed Woodward treats Manchester United like it's his own career championship manager mode, like it's FIFA career mode.
Yeah.
That man, right, and I've got a little bit about him. It's on his Wikipedia page, and now Wikipedia is obviously always heavily edited, right? But just to give you a quick rundown of his background, okay? So it says, Ed Woodward began working for PricewaterhouseCoopers in the Accounting and Tax Advisory Department in 1993, before joining JP Morgan & Company as an investment banker in the Mergers and Acquisitions Department in 1999. Again, so what happened was he used his financial knowledge to help the Glazers broker a deal with Manchester United to help sign them. The Glazer family was so impressed by his skills, they basically decided to hire him. And after they hired him, beg your pardon, he just sort of climbed the ranks, went higher and higher and higher. He has so much trust with the Glazer family because his commercial nous and his business acumen is second to none when it comes to doing deals, irrespective of what we say next about him.
He's fantastic.
He's a very smart guy.
Yeah.
When it comes to getting commercial deals over the line, that man can do it. But he cannot run a football club. He is not qualified to make those decisions whatsoever. Now, we'll go into sort of his sort of background in a bit more depth and what he's done as well. But again, your take on Ed Woodward and what he's done thus far at Manchester United?
Well, I think you summed it up pretty perfectly there, to be honest. And when you ask the question what he's done in his time at United, his record pretty much speaks for itself. It's not an awful lot.
No, nothing.
He's been heavily involved in, like you say, pretty much the running of the club, but he only really has the credentials to be dealing with like the commercial side of it, right? And
he's an accountant, bro. That's what he is. He's an accountant who is basically now a CEO, and he's picking players.
Yeah, I don't really rate any of his work. You know, you look at the signings and the transfer that he's had a hand in. You know, how many players that we have signed post Ferguson because of Ed Woodward would you say have turned out to be a success?
Very few.
If any. I mean, obviously there's two that are still in progress this season. You know, the season hasn't started very well.
I'm trying to think who off the top of my head would I consider to be a standout signing.
So obviously under Moyes you only had Fellaini and Mata.
Well, let's touch upon Fellaini very quickly, because Ed Woodward's first transfer window was Manchester United. He fucked that up spectacularly. He chased Cesc Fabregas, Thiago Alcantara and Leighton Baines all over town. They give him the absolute runaround, to the point where United's only signing was Fellaini, and they overpaid on Marouane Fellaini's buyout clause by £4 million. It wasn't even a difficult deal to do, right? And he overpaid by £4 million. Yeah. I cannot grasp where this guy is trying to take Manchester United.
It really confuses me, right? Every time we go through a transfer window, that a club the size of Manchester United, with the history that we have, you know, and while Fergie was there, you know, they had a reputation for going out and getting their men quite early. They would pay within reason, you know, good money to get who they wanted, and you know, and usually when it was reported that United were sort of interested in someone, when Fergie was there and they were after someone, you know, I'd say 7 or 8 times out of 10 they would get them, right? And get them fairly early or for the price that, you know, that presented decent value, right? Since Fergie left, the ability to do that just seems to have disappeared.
Yeah.
And every transfer window for us is an embarrassment because the transfer window opens, or just before the window opens, right, we get linked with everybody. And naturally, early on, there's some good names, some really strong names.
That's a fact.
And you can sort of weed a few of the ones out which we know aren't happening. And then it leaves you a little short list of people where you think, as a United fan, okay, that would be good. That's got potential. And then you see a few links, and then we end up getting linked to them further and further. And then time just moves on and moves on. Like the Wan-Bissaka deal, right? We know how much earlier should that have been tied up, and for how much less. We won't go into it too much, right? But what did we end up paying? Was it 50 million?
Just under.
We knew that we needed to pay that about 2 months or a month or whatever before we actually paid that, and the time that was wasted to broker that deal, it just blows my mind, because we just become a bit of a from an outsider looking in when it comes to negotiating transfers. We look like a bit of a laughing stock. Really.
Do you know that's an excellent point you made, right? Because when United were negotiating deals for all three players this summer, right? So there was Wan-Bissaka, there was Dan James, and there was Harry Maguire.
Yeah.
So we'll start with Wan-Bissaka just as an example, right? Now, like you said, the Wan-Bissaka deal took around a month to do. That deal can be done in a week, because if you have somebody who is a director of football, or you have a committee of people who know a player's potential and they know a player's value, they will go, look, let's not beat around the bush, give them the money there, what they want, we know he's worth that. Now, when you put an accountant in charge of that, accountant's job is to save money. They go, okay, where can we trim the fat? Where can we save a bit of money here, save a bit of money there? That is why a deal for Wan-Bissaka took the best part of a month. That is why Manchester United paid 20 million for Dan James, and again had to negotiate for about a month. Now, I've been a little bit critical of the Dan James signing. We'll come to Dan James in a bit, but just to give you a quick example of a man that lacks football and knowledge. Now, Hakim Ziyech was available for give or take 25 million. Hakim Ziyech can play on the left, he can play on the right, he can play behind the striker. He was consistently brilliant for Ajax in the Eredivisie. He absolutely lit up the Champions League. There you have a player that Gary Neville was talking about the other day. You want a player with a certain profile who's around 23, 24, that is ready to take the next step in his career, that's not really priced at a big price, right?
Not in today's market.
There's somebody who could be at Manchester United for the next 6 or 7 years, who can play in a variety of different positions and would give you goals, assists and skill and get people on their feet and enhance the brand. That's what players like Ziyech do. He scored a terrific goal, I believe, against Valencia the other day, which was all over Twitter. The fact that Manchester United spent a month negotiating for Daniel James and didn't even look at Ziyech tells me that there is a missing footballing link at that club. And when you have an accountant try and treat Manchester United like it's fucking Football Manager, it doesn't work.
That's the difference between having an Ed Woodward sort of arranging those transfers and a director of football, right? Because primarily a director of football, they're looking at it from a what's best for this team perspective.
Correct.
Right? So they're not, obviously they have financial budgets that they have to operate within, right? I get that. But they're not scrutinising every little pound and penny and sort of, where can I save $1 million here, 5 million there? A director of football looks at the team and what they need and where they need to improve, and they identify a short list and they sort of say, okay, how much? And to an extent, that's what they do. They go and pay. Like Real Madrid, for example, right? Real Madrid recognised last season that they were way off the pace and they needed a huge overhaul, right? So similar-ish situation to United. Obviously, they haven't been in turmoil as long as we have, but last season they were sort of in a similar position, right? Real Madrid, they didn't fuck about. They made, 5-6 signings. They spent huge amounts of money. They identified Hazard. They identified, Luka Jovic? Mendy.
There's a few others.
And they just paid what was being asked of. Largely paid what was being asked of. They didn't fuss about. They just went out and got the job done.
I like that.
And that's what needs to happen at United, right?
Yeah, it does.
But obviously, like you say, you bring it back to Ed Woodward. He is obviously having to, he is a little bit of a puppet on a string as well.
Most definitely. I would agree with that.
And he's under pressure where he has to listen to people from above. So, like you say, but the Ziyech deal, he would have cost maybe £5 to £10 million more, and I bet his wages probably doubled Dan James's wages, right? And Ed Wood has probably looked at that and gone, oh, you know, Dan James, he's British. You know, Welsh, as we know.
Yeah, yeah.
He's British. You know, his wages are going to be half. The deal's potentially going to be not far off half. We'll just go with that.
Yeah.
And it's not good enough.
No, it's not good enough. Do you know what? And just looking through what I've put down here, I mean, again, I'm interested to know. I'd love to be a fly on the wall as to whom is picking the signings for Manchester United, because by all accounts, Alexis Sanchez, who, again, I wasn't against joining it. It was Sanchez when he was at Arsenal. He was on fire. I thought he would be a terrific addition for United. It just didn't work out. Apparently, that is an Ed Woodward signing. That's not a Mourinho signing. Now, Ed Woodward also, I believe, wanted Fred. Again, if you read reports, Mourinho didn't want Fred.
He feared he wouldn't have a signing, wasn't it?
That's correct. He feared he wouldn't have a signing, so he took Fred anyway. Now, we do know this for a fact, that even Perisic was vetoed by Ed Woodward. Ed Woodward said, no, you're keeping Anthony Martial. We've barely seen Anthony Martial this season. When we have seen him, he's been incredibly inconsistent. And truthfully, Martial may never go on to be the player that people hope he is. But even Perisic, a guy who is now at Bayern Munich and is doing relatively okay. He's played okay for Inter Milan over the past couple of seasons.
Yeah.
There's a guy that gives you a 6 out of 10 performance, a 7 out of 10 performance, an 8 out of 10 performance. He's in that range every week. He might not be the best, but you know what you're getting from him all the time. And that sounds strange to a lot of people because, again, they think that, between a 6 and an 8 every week. You know what you're getting with the guy, right? He's going to put in a shift. He's got a bit of quality. He's going to do his thing.
You usually know you're not going to get a bad display.
That's exactly it, yeah. And Ed Woodward vetoed that. Who the fuck are you to veto that, right? That's number one. Number two, United the summer before last had a chance to buy Harry Maguire for 70 million. They declined it. No, he's not good enough. All of a sudden, there's a massive U-turn. United signed Harry Maguire for 80 million. So they could have had Harry Maguire for 10 million less the summer before if you had someone who was in charge and knew what they were doing. Now, part and part of football is this. When you make transfers, you're entitled to make mistakes, right? It happens. Me and Becky have discussed this on the podcast before. When you work, say, for example, in an office environment, you have a mix of people where, will be from working class backgrounds, middle class backgrounds, upper class backgrounds. You'll have people from different races, different cultures, different creeds. You're mixing everyone together. You're trying to get results. That is times 1,000 on a football pitch. You might have 11 players from 11 different countries speaking 8 different languages. It doesn't always work out when you sign a player. And I think Mourinho looked at someone like an Eric Bailly, for example, and he went, you know what? It just hasn't worked. And there's nothing wrong with that. Mourinho wanted another centre-half because he was like, look, I can see what this club needs. Again, Ed Woodward vetoed it. He's like, no, you have to make this work. But that doesn't work in football. That's an accountant talking.
Yeah, and you look at the situation at Man City, right? Obviously, Pep Guardiola, he brought in Otamendi.
Yeah.
Obviously, before then, I don't think it was a Guardiola signing, but they had Mangala before then.
Claudio Bravo.
Yeah, obviously the Bravo, he brought him in. That's what he wanted. It didn't work out. He was allowed to sign Edison.
Edison, yeah.
Then obviously Pep Guardiola, not to be confused.
Yeah, definitely.
As then went to sign, was it John Stones?
Yeah.
And then Laporte. So he is being backed. So he made decisions that didn't turn out the way that he wanted to, right? And the players didn't turn out to be of the quality that he expected them to. And he was allowed by the club and the owners to say, you know what? We look at your record as a manager. We see how successful it is. We trust your judgment. We accept that you will not get every decision correct.
You can't get 100 correct. You're not going to get them all
exactly.
Right.
And we backed the deal. We thought that it would turn out like you did. It hasn't. You know what? Have another go.
Yeah, look, that the game is the game.
Yeah.
And you summed it up well. Have another go. You cannot keep rewarding mediocrity just because they're there. Phil Jones got a new contract. Chris Smalling got a new contract. Ashley Young got a new contract. Jesse Lingard just signed a new contract.
Yeah.
Juan Mata signed a new contract. None of those players are going to be part of a championship winning side, let alone a team that's trying to challenge for the top 4.
I believe Marcus Rojo, is he still floating around?
Rojo is there as well too. United have one of the biggest wage bills in the Premier League. Yeah. They have nothing to show for it.
You mentioned the saga with Maguire last summer when they could have signed him for 70. This year they signed him for, 80 odd?
Yeah.
Or 80 million. it's starting to become a little bit of an embarrassment in parts because they're now going back and visibly correcting their obvious mistakes. They've come back with their tail between their legs. They've said, oh, I think it was too much money, or he wasn't worth the money, or he's not at the level that we're at. And they've come back around this window and kind of gone, yeah, sorry about that, we fucked up here. So because we failed to address our problems last season, these problems have now increased.
Yeah.
So we're in a worse position. So now, can we have this player again, please? Because we now think that he's good enough. Yeah, that's 80 million. Okay, we'll give you 80 million.
Bro,
it sounds ridiculous.
It's embarrassing. And bear in mind the Maguire deal as well. Again, they negotiated that for the large majority of their transfer window, trying to save money. If you already know a player's value, just pay the fucking money. Like, Manchester United is supposed to be the world's biggest sporting brand alongside the Dallas Cowboys. If you are the world's biggest sporting brand, you don't argue over 3 million, 5 million, 8 million. If you know that that is the piece of the jigsaw you need, go out and make it happen. United cannot move forward with Ed Woodward and the Glazers in charge. It isn't going to work. And something has to happen soon where this changes.
And what baffles me as well, right, is that there's people in position of power, right, that are still not grasping, they're still not understanding the fact that by trying to over-negotiate these deals, the time that they're wasting versus the money that they're potentially saving, which, can I point out, we don't actually end up saving that money that they try to anyway.
Not at all.
So they should be, learning that they're trying to negotiate, but clubs know that we have money, right? And clubs know that we'll end up paying it.
The worst kept secret ever, by the way, might I add.
So all these negotiations of trying to save money very rarely come off. So we don't save money. And then secondly, as a result of not saving money, we then also have lost the time that we need to fill other positions, right? So you would think it would get to a point now where someone would realise, hey, there's no value in trying to sort of broker a different deal now. We might as well just pay what we need because, we get signings through the door, and we also have a few weeks left of the transfer window to assess other positions of weakness. We know that from this last transfer window, we should have signed a midfielder of real quality, and we didn't.
Nope.
Because we were too busy fussing around with the deals for the other players, which could have been put to bed 2 or 3 weeks sooner.
Bro, much sooner. Much sooner.
And they would have had 2 or 3 weeks, possibly even a month, of shopping time to assess another deal for another player.
Correct. Very well put. We'll go to a quick interval. Add us up on the social media platforms. If you want to DM me or Becky, you're more than welcome to. If you want to tweet us as well, again, let us know your opinions and everything thus far. We have plenty more United stuff coming up right after this. Stay tuned. We'll be back in 5. Okay, people, we're back. Episode 53, Victory and Vices podcast, the Manchester United special. So, you've been watching the first half. We've discussed the Glazer family. We've discussed Ed Woodward. Now we're going to move on to the manager and the playing squad. Now, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. I know we have differed on his appointment a little bit.
Okay,
Just off conversations we've had. Now, I used an analogy the other day that I wanted to relate to everybody at home and to everybody watching.
That's the one Reese agreed with, right?
The one that Reese agreed with. Shout out to Reese. If you don't know who Reese is,
you should.
And you probably do. Reese is, he's part of EMV. He comes on when he's back home. Right now, he's off on a magical adventure up north doing what he does, right? But I used this analogy, not to digress. So the analogy was this. So I said the other day, if I had just got an IT A level and I became head of Microsoft, is that a fair transition? Is that a proper progression? Because I've not really earned my stripes, right? But I've got an A level, I've done the basics, but then I go and get a top job as the head of Microsoft.
Okay.
I feel like that's the equivalent with Solskjaer. You've got a man that relegated Cardiff and took Molde to a title in Norway, which a lot of people could do right anyway, and that's not to disrespect the Norwegian league too much. But you've got a man who has got his ITA level and has gone straight to being the head of Microsoft, so he's jumped straight into being the Manchester United manager. He was only ever a temporary fit. And the wave of emotion that came afterwards, because United had a few results and the players had played with a little bit more freedom, again, he wasn't supposed to be there beyond the summer, and now he's still there. And his record right now, I mean, we'll call it as it is. It's pretty fucking awful. It's dirt as a Manchester United manager. Now, I know you feel like he should be given some time, right? And we'll come to that in a moment. I just don't think he has enough time in the world now, because he is, to me, if United take a hammering on the weekend, he's going to be very close to the exit, and I don't think he's going to be able to turn things around. That's my take.
Yeah.
What's your take on Solskjaer?
So, the analogy that you just put forward, right? So, I'm going to put it out there and say that I totally get it, right? I understand your comparison.
He's a novice, essentially.
Yeah, that's, in summary, that is what you're saying, right? You're saying that somebody who is somewhat underqualified, right? Very underqualified.
Lacks credentials.
For a position, they've ended up in a position which is above what you would think they're capable of handling, right? Is what you're saying.
Very true.
I do feel like in sport and in football, there is a case here that isn't as comparable, right?
Okay.
Now,
I'm listening.
You look at the examples of Guardiola, Zidane, ones that just spring to mind first of all. There have been managers who have little to no real built-up credentials.
That's true, to a degree, yeah.
Other than maybe being involved in the reserve or youth setup of a Barcelona, of a Real Madrid, and that being pretty much it, right? I'm sure there are other examples as well. It's just in the moment, obviously, those are the two that spring to mind. You could argue that Solskjaer has more of a diverse managerial experience or managerial background than like a Guardiola or a Zidane.
Again, that is to a degree true, yeah.
With the Cardiff situation, yes, he did get them relegated, but as Cardiff have proven, they tend to get relegated no matter who's at the helm.
It's not a lie. It's not a lie.
Because the team that they have been promoted with twice is nowhere near of the standard that they require to stay up. So I do feel that was kind of a sinking ship regardless.
Yeah.
And obviously at Mulder, yes, perhaps me and you could go in there and do a decent job. Maybe we could guide him towards the title.
Give or take.
But the saying, you can only beat what's in front of you. You can only achieve what you can achieve.
That's very true, yeah.
So I totally get what you're saying and the point that you're making, but I feel like that there are scenarios in football where there could be a situation where someone can do well, where they have other attributes aside obvious managerial experience, right?
Okay.
Such as their background in football in terms of who they've served under, the lessons that they've learned through, for example, being under Sir Alex Ferguson, and what he's picked up along the way and his understanding of the Manchester United way. I know we hear that a lot. It seems to kind of disappeared really in the last few years, but there's a lot of talk that he understands the United way, yeah, in terms of the bludgeoning youth into the squad, there being a young team, and sort of backing it in the long term. So, am I happy with the job that he's doing currently? Obviously not, right? His win percentage is woeful. I think he won his first 9 away games on the spin, and he hasn't won one since, right? Which I understand is atrocious. It's a terrible record. But I think that the problems are largely coming from the two people that we've spoke about before Solskjaer and the players, which are Ed Woodward and the Glazers, right?
Yeah.
And I know you are perhaps not a big believer in Solskjaer's ability to turn it around. But then, if we were to get rid of Solskjaer, the question I keep asking yourself, other Man United fans, other football fans, is who next? So if he goes, who else comes in? We've had Mourinho.
You stole my question, by the way.
Sorry about that. We've had Van Gaal. It would get to a point where, perhaps we bring in a Pochettino, right? Perhaps we bring in somebody else, an Allegri. But then if we bring them in...
You've seen my fucking question list. You haven't.
I promise I haven't. And the same thing happens again.
Yeah.
We could then turn and go, was it really Solskjaer then? Was Solskjaer that bad, or did he actually have something that, if given time, he might have been able to build if the Glazers or Woodward allowed him to bring in the right blend of sort of proven quality to go with the youth that he's trying to bring into the team. Do you know what I'm saying?
I get you. You made some very interesting points. What I will say, just to counter what you're saying, is I firmly believe from the start, Solskjaer was never the right man.
Okay.
Now, Solskjaer's made some interesting decisions, and for me, most notably, and this one's on him. This is not. I don't feel like this is on the. No, he could have pushed for this in the summer. We've discussed this on the podcast previously. There is no way Romelu Lukaku should have been let go from that Manchester United side. That's my take on it.
Without replacement or just in general?
Period. This summer United would do a big overhaul. We know that, right? Goals win you games. Now, I get that Solskjaer kind of wanted to play maybe a more fast, more fluid system, right?
Yeah.
But if you put an arm around Lukaku and you have proper man management skills and you say, look, Rom, you're my guy. I know things haven't been easy for you thus far and they've been rough, but I do truly believe in you. And next season, if you want a new challenge, we'll look at it then. But I need you to be my guy this season. He's a confidence player. Build him up. Make him feel special. He becomes your number 9. Paul Pogba should have gone in the summer. What should have happened is Solskjaer should have been proactive and gone, look, if you're going to give me a contract, this is what needs to happen. Paul Pogba goes. At the start of the transfer window, you turn around and you say to Ed Woodward and the Glazers, you've given me the contract, I need you to stick by me and do this. So at the start of the window, you say to Paul Pogba and Mino Raiola, you sit them both down and you say, Real Madrid, come in tomorrow with a bid of 130 to 150 million. You can catch the next flight out of here. You reinvest that money into 3 creative midfielders, and you then give the team a chance moving forward. What he's done is the opposite. He's got rid of Lukaku and not replaced him. That is Solskjaer's fault. That's not the Glazers or the...
Do you think?
Yeah, I do. And we'll come on to recruitment and the playing squad in a bit too, but that's on him. That is very much on him. If you're proactive and you say, look, I know what I need, I know what I want, I'm going to get it done, and you go in and you're not a yes man, you stand up to that board, you need to apply a bit of pressure. I don't think he's got it in him, and I think he's made key decisions that are incorrect.
It's difficult to really know, right, what goes on behind closed doors, because he's since come out and said, obviously, we're short of a striker, a quality striker. He's also mentioned that they were in for a striker in the summer, but the right options, seemingly weren't available, or the right quality of player they wanted wasn't there. He has mentioned in the past that he has control of the transfers. Okay, now that's a difficult one to kind of read into, because you feel like a lot of the time a manager would say that because they don't want the media and the press and and the fans to be of an understanding that they're not, right? Because it's just not the message that you want to convey, right?
Mm-hmm.
As soon as the fans know that the manager isn't in charge of decisions, and then you've got Ed Woodward that's choosing the players, then it's just not the message that you want coming across, right? So we don't really know fully if Solskjaer is making all the decisions.
He probably isn't making all of them, but you need to stand up and have a bit of backbone.
Because I imagine he would have been heavily involved in the decision to let Lukaku go.
Which, by the way, I have to reiterate, the complete wrong decision.
I mean, we have mentioned on previous episodes on VMV that his particular style of how he plays wasn't necessarily suited to the way that we want to play.
That is true.
Which creates a bit of a problem that if we aren't going to play to a way that suits his style of football, then he's always going to be made a little bit of a scapegoat, right? Because you don't play to his strengths, then obviously it makes him look under par, or like he's not performing to the level that he should be. So, I mean, he wasn't someone that I was under the impression that he had to stay at all costs. It depended on who he was replaced with. It's just interesting to me. I would like to know if Solskjaer, by saying that yes, we can let him go, has he perhaps then outlined the list of players to replace, and the Glazers or Woodward haven't?
We know for a fact, right, the 2 players Solskjaer wanted. And again, this comes down to Solskjaer's decision making, right? Because again, I can't quite fathom what Ole Gunnar Solskjaer is thinking. So we know he wanted Jadon Sancho, right?
Yeah.
That's pie in the sky. Jadon Sancho isn't touching Manchester United with an 11-foot barge pole, because he does not want any part of that shit. Why would you go to Manchester United? Why are you chasing after the unchaseable, right?
Money.
You can't do it, right? Jadon Sancho's a smart lad. He's not just going to take money and go to Man United when he knows after Dortmund he could go to Madrid, he could go to Barca, he could go anywhere he wanted to go. You're not going to go to someone who's playing for 10th in the Premier League. It's not going to happen. We also know that he wanted Paulo Dybala. Now, Dybala, we've had this debate, me and Becky. I don't think he fits into that United side, period. Now, what you have is, you need if you're going to play the fast, fluid formation, you need somebody like Firmino, for example. Somebody who can get around, can harry, can press high, but can also hold the ball up and do a variety of different jobs very well. Dybala is like a false nine. He wouldn't really fit in as a main striker at Manchester United. And some of these signings that he's looking at, and I'm just thinking, what are you doing? Why didn't you just keep Lukaku for a season and build up his confidence? Lukaku would be better than what's there now. Now, if you want to get rid of Sanchez, that's fine. Get him off the wage bill. That's a lot of money. I get that. And Sanchez, he hasn't really, been the player he was. That's fine. But Lukaku I think he became the record goal scorer for Belgium over the weekend, right?
Yeah.
He knows where the net is. Even in a bad season, he's probably going to get you 15 goals. This obsession with Solskjaer, right, for British players. He wants Jadon Sancho. He wants Declan Rice. He's Sean Longstaff. Again, right, he's turned Manchester United into a bit of a youth team. Like, I'm all for giving youth a chance, but you have to give youth a chance alongside proper players. Again, I'm going to go back to it, right, just very quickly, as I know I caught a ton of fucking flack, and a lot of people, and I don't want to diss people when I say this, are a little short-sighted, right? Daniel James was not what Manchester United needed this summer. And I get that he's a hard-working, likeable lad, right? And he does have footballing ability. But Manchester United will be the death of Daniel James. What Manchester United needed, like Gary Neville said, was a player with a certain profile. Like a Hakim Ziyech, someone with experience who can carry that team. Daniel James played for Manchester United the other night against Alkmaar, and then he played against Newcastle. Now, Daniel James, he's... Manchester United in those games had basically one shot on target. Now, that's not all Daniel James's fault, but he is not part of the solution. He's part of the problem. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer is getting a lot of these transfer decisions wrong. Now, people say, there's no value in the market. Van de Beek could have easily got him in the summer, right? He's a terrific footballer at Ajax, would have replaced one of Herrera and Fellaini.
Yeah.
Hakim Ziyech would have gone and potentially replaced a Lingard or a Mata, would have added to that squad. United probably could have got James Maddison in the summer. They're going to have to go and get James Maddison this summer for 10 million more than they could have got him for this summer. So there was mistakes that were made by Solskjaer, and I don't know if he's man enough to stand up to the Glazer family. I don't think he has the credentials to lead a squad that really needs somebody at the helm that has a lot of character.
With the Dan James situation, now I don't know if it was the original plan for Dan James to have as much game time as he's having, right? Because I certainly didn't see, when they signed Dan James, I didn't see him as someone who was going to instantly go into the starting lineup every single week and be the answer.
No, and I don't think he was.
Because that's not what he is currently and may not turn out to be. But that's the kind of the responsibility that he's almost being given, right? Because whether me or you, anyone like to admit it or not, he's probably our best performing player this season in terms of what he's given, right?
He's one of the best,
right?
But I will counter that just to say he's been the best of a bad bunch.
Of course, right? But given his age and the step up that he's made, he's adjusted, decently, right?
It's been okay.
In the circumstances. But I go back to the point that I don't think that was meant to be the route for Dan James straight away. He was supposed to be coming in as a young talent, okay? Someone who's going to come on in substitute appearances, cup games, maybe Europa League games, and build and grow and develop under a Solskjaer. Now you look at the injuries. Obviously they got rid of Lukaku later on. You had the injuries to Rashford, injuries to Martial, which has meant that he's been thrown in. Okay.
United are a youth team now. There's Rashford, there's Greenwood.
I feel he deserves a little bit of slack on that situation, right? When you say about Solskjaer also sort of standing up to it, I think Louis van Gaal and Mourinho even more so got to points where they had a fuckful. and they sort of stood up to it because Mourinho's then coming out in his press conferences and saying
rightly so
controversial things. But the difficult thing is you start to sort of create a bit of a toxic relationship between the manager and the owners and Glazer.
You do, but do you know what I'll say? I'll say that to say this. If you're a man with a moral compass and you know the difference between right and wrong, you will stand up and say what's right.
Yes.
You won't hesitate to do it. And I know Mourinho didn't create the best environment in the end, but he stood up and he said, look, this is wrong. And I like that.
I agree. And I'm with him and I'm with you on that. But the point I'm trying to make is that at what cost is it for you as a Man United manager when you start doing that?
Well, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer is not short of money. We could easily just go back to Mulder and manage.
Yeah,
and his legacy is cemented. So for him, I think his legacy would be enhanced if he actually stood up to the Glazer family. All the fans would be like, Ole's our guy. He came out straight away and said that's bullshit.
But at the same time, he's currently the manager of his not his boyhood club, but his dream club.
And with all due respect, it's going to shit.
But he obviously doesn't want to lose that job.
Well, do you know what?
And he wants to be given the time to turn it
If I was him, I would look at that as a busted flush and go, you know what? I'm pissing into the wind.
I mean, I just think the role or the position of Manchester United manager at the moment, it's just a poison chalice. Until whatever the fuck is going on behind the scenes changes.
Yeah.
There is only so much that you can do. When you have one of the greatest managers of all time in Jose Mourinho, he won. Mourinho will get you trophies, right? We don't know at the time what trophies, but he did bring us trophies, right? Because he's a serial winner. But it even got to the point where one of the greatest managers of all time just lost his head, just ran out of patience, right? You got Louis van Gaal, a very successful manager. It just gets to a point where you're looking at the managers that have tried and failed, and you're going to run out of people to come in to do something. I understand that, Solskjaer obviously wouldn't be anywhere near your first choice, and you said that his CV and his credentials don't match up. You make valid points, right? There's people that would agree with that, but I think the main issue is what's going on behind the scenes just doesn't allow any manager that comes into United to flourish to their full ability.
I'd agree with that. To a degree, I will agree with that. But what I will say is this. The bar at Manchester United has fallen so low that people have now become incredibly forgiving. Incredibly forgiving. Solskjaer's run of form is abysmal. It's abysmal. Bear in mind now, United historically are one of the top clubs in the world. That is a trash record. For United then to go against Newcastle and Alkmaar and only get one shot on target, irrespective of whether your role was designed to be in the first team or not, that's trash. Yeah. You're pulling on a Manchester United shirt that was utter piss. And again, I feel like the bar has been set so low that people just go, wow, Dan James, he can run fast. Well, terrific, yes, he can run fast, but he does lack the technical ability right now to change a game. We've all seen that. Against Alkmaar, he was dire. Against Newcastle, he was dire. He played for Wales last night. He was okay. He wasn't spectacular. I watched him play for Swansea a few times last season. He was okay. He wasn't spectacular. The bar is so low at that club right now that people are so forgiving. They'll just praise absolutely anything. Yeah. And the standards of your Ronaldos, your Tevez, your Rooney, your Berbatov is long gone. It's long gone, bro. And people need to start having a bit of backbone and going, you know what? What really is the standard at Manchester United? What is acceptable and unacceptable? Because Solskjaer's turning them into a youth team. I hear people going, Angel Gomez should start every game. Angel Gomez is not ready to play Premier League football week in, week out. He's not. Dan James is not ready to play Premier League football week in, week out at that level. Fuck. Jesse Lingard has no confidence. Juan Mata is old as shit. Marcus Rashford has been playing like, he's been injured for God knows how long. Solskjaer had his decisions to make at the start of the summer. I don't think he got them right. That was his first big test, and he didn't get them right.
There were definitely incorrect decisions that have been made. I just don't know to what degree who made them.
Why are you chasing Dybala and Sancho? Do you know what I mean? And you're leaving it last minute. Dybala went right down to the wire, and he wasn't even really interested in United. He just wanted the money. And we'll go into sort of the playing side of things now, because it segues in very nicely. Yeah. What is Solskjaer's obsession with British talent? British talent comes with a British tax. They're far more expensive than everybody else. Why is he so obsessed with Declan Rice and Sancho
Do you think
and everyone
that's
else?
just him, though?
I do. I do think it's him, yeah. I think he's got this in his head that British players or having a British core is going to take United to where they need to go. And I don't buy it. I think you get very overhyped and over-expensive players. There's very few England players that can justify a price tag. I mean, we can't argue Sancho because right now he hasn't gone for a high price tag. The only one that's gone for a high price tag that can justify it in my eyes is Raheem Sterling.
Yeah.
That's it. Who else can justify a price tag? I mean, fuck, Ox went for about 40 million. We haven't seen much from him. In fairness, he's been injured. But who else is there, bro? Like, there's no one.
There's not any.
There's a whole market out there.
Kyle Walker went for 50
Kyle
million.
Walker's done okay. I mean, you know, he can maybe justify some of it. But again, I go back to Ziyech. I go back to Van der Beek. You know, Maddison, you're going to look at probably about 80 million next year. There's serious recruitment issues at Manchester United. And it starts with Solskjaer. He's the guy that then needs to go, look, this is my team. That's not happening. And you put Ed Woodward in his place. Somebody has to do it, bro. You can't be a yes man all your life. You can't.
Do you think it will get to a point, though, where somebody is going to do that to Ed Woodward and the Glazers, or do you think it will be the Glazers will have to go first, though, before that happens?
Time will
Because
tell.
I get the impression that that's the B option there with the Glazers leaving or relinquishing.
The Glazers and the bean counter, until they go, United aren't really going to go any further. But Solskjaer, to me, never had the credentials to do the job. The fact that he's looking at all these British players bewilders me. I said to you in a WhatsApp conversation a while back, I said 100% Maguire will join Manchester United. I remember I called it, I said it was so obvious Stevie Wonder could see it, right? It was going to happen, right? And I'll tell you this for a fact now. I am 99.9 convinced Mandzukic will join Manchester United.
You think?
Which then throws the theory of a playing style completely out the window. Completely. Because if you're going for a fast, fluid formation, Mandzukic is not your guy.
No.
Mandzukic is a plan B that comes on to change the game when you need an aerial threat. He's someone that'll hold up the ball. If Mandzukic comes in for £10 million and Lukaku was sold, someone who is significantly younger and a better goal scorer that play the same position, then please feel free to ask questions of Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. Please feel free to say to him, where is this team going?
There's also a lot of links up with someone like Callum Wilson, so you come in instead.
A trash link as well, again, I don't want Callum Wilson at Manchester United. Great player at Bournemouth, do your thing. I don't want him there.
Mm-hmm. But those are the only two real names that I'm seeing being thrown around.
Well,
I don't agree with the Mandzukic transfer either, because I believe you're getting almost a downgraded version of
what
Lukaku.
was the price for Wilson?
I suppose 40-50 million.
So let's say United now go out and they sign Declan Rice and they sign Wilson for, we'll say 120 million between the two of them, right? Is that good business for you?
Not particularly.
I don't think that. I think when we talk about...
I don't rate Declan Rice in the slightest.
I don't get the hype with Declan Rice.
Now, Callum Wilson, I mean...
He has scored goals,
yeah,
admittedly.
out of the two, I could see that one a lot more. I still wouldn't be convinced. You know, and it doesn't mean that, you know, younger English strikers can't go on and do that, you know, at another level if given the opportunity. You know, he's a good player, Callum Wilson. He's done very well for Bournemouth and he does have ability. I mean, there's not to say that, you know, that couldn't go well, but it's not where I would want us to be spending 60-70 million on a striker.
United's recruitment has been trash. It's been trash.
Yeah.
The only person, right, I quite like Maguire in fairness, but just not at the price he's been paid. The only person I've looked at and I thought, you know what, I really like that signing is Wan-Bissaka. Yeah. That is it. I can't even remember the last time I looked at a United signing, bar maybe Ibrahimovic. Pogba was okay. I quite liked Alexis, but then, you know, obviously...
You go back as far as Falcao and Di Maria, you know, you kind of thought, you believe...
Bro, throughout Edwards' tenure, we could probably name on one hand the amount of decent signings. If that, right? And something has to give at Manchester United. It can't keep going the way it is. There's owners that don't give a fuck about the club. There's a guy making signings that doesn't understand football. There's a manager there that really shouldn't be there in my eyes. And quite frankly, there's a group of players there that just aren't good enough. I'll throw some names out there right now, right? You tell me if they're good enough to take Manchester United to a top 4 at this point, okay? Mason Greenwood.
No.
Right now, very good prospect. Cannot believe he's been thrown in the first team the way he is.
Well,
ridiculous.
I don't believe that he is. It's not the right time for him to
and it's not a question of his talent, it's timing.
The fact that he's been thrown in is again just due to
and it's not that he's not good enough right now. Maybe later down the line he will be, but again right now he's not the guy to lead them forward. There's too much pressure. We've been over Dan James. I firmly believe that right now Dan James will need another 2 or 3 seasons before he can even start to prove anything. Yeah. If he even gets that with a different manager, right? Angel Gomez.
No.
Scott McTominay.
I mean, I like him, but I ultimately don't know if he's going to develop enough quality to lead a United side to success.
Okay, that's fair. I think he's very limited in terms of what he brings.
I like his attitude, like his endeavour. I like his work rate, sort of effort, gets about. You know, he's got like he doesn't mind the forward pass, but I just think that his, like you say, his ability as a centre midfielder is a bit limited.
Do you know? Every squad needs a McTominay in a sense that
a squad.
Because United had a Darren Fletcher back in the day, but Darren Fletcher was surrounded by a Ronaldo, he was surrounded by a Rooney, he was surrounded by a Tevez, surrounded by a Berbatov, surrounded by a Carrick, surrounded by a Hargreaves, surrounded by a Scholes. There was quality around him, and do you know, players like Park and Fletcher, they're not world-class players in the sense that they have amazing technical ability. But if you surround them with technical ability, they can be the guys that put a foot in.
Talent and hard work, innit?
Exactly, yeah. You need a combination of the two. So out of those players, I'm pretty much agreeing with you, bro. And just in terms of the established players this season, we'll name a few very quickly. Lingard, where does he go next? What's he going to do with his Manchester United career, do you think?
I think it just peters out, to be honest.
I think he's run his race now.
There needs to be a manager at United which phases him out. He needs a loan move somewhere to start that off. The only difficult thing is at the moment is due to the lack of options we have. You know, it's him or who. You know.
That's exactly true. Yeah.
So until the people still think he's young. He's not young. He's like 28, isn't he?
I thought he's about 44 now, isn't he? Like?
So they can't play that card anymore. He likes usually playing against Arsenal, and he doesn't mind a goal at Wembley. And I feel like he went through a period where he bagged a few worldies, which bought him a little bit of time, and people thought, oh, perhaps he's now flourishing.
He looks like he needs a fresh start now.
But that slowly sort of petered out. He's not a Manchester United player at the top level. Again, you know, on his day, he's not someone that's terrible to come on in the last 10-15 minutes, like say a squad player, because he does have a little bit of techers in him somewhere. But you don't want him in your starting 11, which is going to win matches for you outright. Yeah.
Okay.
So no, he's not one for the future for me.
Okay. Well, I'll give you two yes or no scenarios, and you're going to pick one or the other. Who'd you pick? Do you pick who'd you pick out of Martial and Rashford if you had to let one go?
Martial.
I would go as in keep or let go.
I'd let Martial go.
Same. I would let Martial go 100%. I think Rashford is a significantly better player, and when you give Rashford a little bit of time to recalibrate, he is going to be back on fire.
I think if a Klopp or a Guardiola, or if a Rashford has gone into the Liverpool or the City side, I think he does wonders.
Yeah. And one question I wanted to ask you just before we end this. If Solskjaer goes tomorrow, who would you want to replace him?
Well, I think I've named both of them already, really. The obvious candidate would be Pochettino. And, you know, what he's done at Spurs, I think could potentially carry over well into United.
It would translate well, potentially.
Right? Because United would essentially then give him all of the money that he hasn't quite had at Spurs, right? To sort of go that extra yardage, right? Outside of that, it then becomes a bit more difficult. I mentioned Allegri.
I like Allegri as well.
I like Allegri. I like what he's done. I like his brand of football. So a Pochettino or an Allegri for me really would be my two.
Do you know
options.
what? They're exactly my two options as well. And to everybody at home, please, 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 let us know your opinions. If you're Manchester United fans, we want to know. Do you agree with us? You disagree with us? Are there any points that we sort of missed that you want to bring up? Add us up on the social media platforms. We're back next week for just, you know, the regular stuff. We'll have more specials coming up. If you haven't seen our specials on racism and transgender athletes and you know, various other ones too, please go take a look. Again, we want all your opinions. So I've been Rory Spooner. This has been James Vack. This is episode 53 of Victory and Vices podcast. We will be back next week. Take care, people. Ciao.